Hello and welcome back to Hearts of Iron 4, Equestria at War, the Kasa Free State. Sorry about no episode yesterday. I had a super annoying glitch with this mod where I literally couldn't run it. I spent my entire normal recording time trying to fix it to allow me to actually run the game, and it took me the entire time. Never found out what was wrong. Never was able to fix the issue, but guess what happened? Tried it today, worked perfectly, no issues. I don't know what was wrong, but it's working. So I'm just not going to question it, I suppose. But let's get to the game. The first commander's closing statements as the council stacks their papers and prepares to return to their election preparations. All of the councillors await the closing remarks of their first commanders. She has led them through much, and they cling to every word. So let us hear what she has to say. I mean, I think, judging by how she's not one of the options, I'm pretty sure from the choices in the election, I think this is going to be a retirement notice. First Commander's final statement. Finally, before we break out and begin the nitty-gritty details out of the national politics, I have a few more things to say to you all. This comment drew the attention of the room, prompting all present to lean forward, waiting with bated breath. Yermurthu, out of the corner of her eye, noticed Lua's surprise as well. Whatever came next, it must have been important. The pony met eyes with Pastorina, who bore a stern look on his face, gazing upon the faces gathered that day. The mare knew that none of them were ready for what came next. I have led this nation for 40 years. It is a part of me as much as I am a part of it. You all call me Avo behind my back. I know that, and I've learned to accept it. While thus far I have talked about change, I now want to speak of things to remain the same. This council has advised me for all the time as the first commander. Its faces may have changed, but its spirit is always the same. Democratic elections, limits on terms, they must remain a pillar of Kasa for as long as this nation draws breath. Our laws have stayed the same in spirit, and while we have needed to modernize them in the standards of the day, they must always protect those who may not be able to protect themselves, and guard the rights and liberties of all our citizens. The spirit must never change. Mansu Erba paused, taking a deep breath. When she resumed, she spoke in a hushed tone, though I should not busy you all with too many words, for there is one thing that needs some change in Kasa. Silence falls in the room. The sudden announcement. Me. The single word reverberated around the room. Everyone in attendance asked themselves if they had heard correctly. Lua stared at Erba, unable to think clearly. He stammered out a sentence. But Avo, we need... Erba cut him short. I am not to be Kasa's Avo any longer. My health is waning, and I am growing weaker, both of mind and body. And we are entering an age of problems that I am not prepared to face. These are the issues of steel and electricity, of modern policies and diplomacy. I cannot lead you all any longer. I will work with the government to organize elections for the new commander, and then I shall be off to live the rest of my life. I have a husband to get back to, you know. The shock finally settled in among these present. Any who were not already seated found themselves floored. There were shaking heads and teary eyes. Even the Makwian ambassador showed signs of emotion over this. Suddenly, Yerthamu rose. But Mansu! This is sudden! What if Kasa is not ready for this? Erba, with a smile, said, Of course Kasa is ready. It has been my life's work to prepare it for a moment that I didn't know would come. I know as well as you all that every first commander has led Kasa for life. But I cannot go on any longer. Sometimes I believe I'm the tiredest creature in the world. Mansu Erba sat calmly, and a moment of silence wound through the room. Every creature in attendance realized she was genuine. As Erba saw this, she went on, Please, all of you, know that I have made this decision taking everything I can into account. I was elected in a crisis, and I have lived in a crisis since then. I've looked forward to the day where I can wake up in my own home and live my life as a mother and grandmother without the concerns of a nation weighing on my spirit. Believe me, I value highly the work I have done for this nation, and I am filled with joy to see its success. But I am still a mayor, and I have things I would like to do with myself. You all shower me with praise for what I have done, but after today, Erba closed her eyes and sighed deeply. Can I open them? I can't read the text like that. After today, please look upon me as just another citizen of this nation, as another creature basking in the liberty and freedom that Kasa guarantees to all who live within its borders. I know already many of you shall ask me for advice on how to preserve our nation and its traditions, so I shall address that now. As long as your hearts are interwoven with the spirit of freedom and liberty, then you do not need the words of any single zebra, for you simply listen to your own heart, and it shall guide you to a brighter tomorrow. I have already given you my thoughts on the state of our nation today, and if you wish for the last testament of my political life, use that if you wish. But remember, while Kasa may be a part of me, it is a part of all of you as well. Do not let any forces cloud that perception in your minds. Kasa may be a nation, but it is also a spirit, and that spirit lives within all of you. Thank you. Mansu Erba, the Avo of Kasa, rose from her seat. Walking with vitality she has not possessed in years, she left the council hall and entered the passenger seat of a car. Beside her was her husband, and together they drove off to their country home. Can she even do that? Oh, Avo, what will happen now? So I literally teared up a bit. So that's fun. I was not expecting me to do that. Oh, the Pekiko's principal grumble. In the days following Mansu Erba's resignation, many took the news with sadness, but some quietly lashed out behind closed doors. These critics saw the whole idea of resignation as poor form and bad precedent. To them, it is essential for a first commander to act until their death, and anything less would be short of declaration of duty. Some even worried of the consequences of the coexisting of two first commanders. Okay, give me a moment. I actually need to wipe my eyes from tears. Okay. Among those critics are the Pecunos principals, those families descendant of former tribal nobility sold into slavery became a fixture of Kasan society. Early on, those freed slaves swore to relinquish any claim to power or privileges. Instead, they turned to cultural work, acting as a archivist, historians, and particular funeral directors. Since the creation of the role of first commanders, they played an important ceremonial role in the transfer of power, as the funerals of the previous first commander traditionally coincided with the nomination with their successor. Therefore, a cynical rebuke of their critics would be that Mansu's resignation effectively meant that the Pukis principals have no participation in the ceremonies. Those complaints have failed to gain any popularity, however. After all, everyone in Kasa knows that Mansu Erba's venerable age means that her death is near anyway. Let her enjoy her twilight years. Let's see. Okay. Yes, we've read all those. Yep. Alright. Kasan Advisory Council election. As it has been and shall be, the Kasan Advisory Council has once again ended its tenure, and all across the land, citizens gather to their local towns and villages to choose councillors to represent them in the national forum. Yet, what was meant to be a formal, typical election has now turned into something else. For our first commander, Mansu Erba, has retired, and per law and tradition, a new first commander shall be chosen by the councillors following the election. This, in itself, has led to the election turning into one for who should become the next first commander, as local candidates clash with one another in support of prominent names. So far, 4 in particular have shown prominence. I'll start reading that in a moment. First, the Eliko. The time for election has finally come, and it seems they will be more impactful than any creature thought possible. All the citizens of Kasa shall go to their town or village center and vote for the fate of their nation. Our cause. It was early in the afternoon when Atu Kanza... Is that one of you guys? Yep, you. Okay, that's you. It was early in the afternoon when Atu Kasa got on the stage of the Elra Rosa amphitheater. She was supposed to read some of the poems, but her heart was not into it. They felt hollow and weak. The zebra looked at the crowd, eager to hear her speak. Was she supposed to give them all what they wanted? Something to feel good about themselves? And in a flash of clarity threw her poems to the wind. My dear compatriots, I wish to ask you all a question. Are we free? Do we deserve to be? The simple answer might be that we are, and do because we can all ask those questions. Freedom is not an alien concept, nor is it a privilege that is to be gained. It is our birthright, our very natural state. Chains, debts, and very vocalism of servitude. Those are the constructs. Those are the lies that deny us access to the real world and rob us of our potential. As we speak, thousands upon thousands remain bound by those lies. In Griffiths, in Barrett, in Osterland, even the coalition of river hypocrites, lied to by the knights, merchants, kings, and so-called democratic leaders. Liars, all of them, and yet these bound creatures have the right to think, to live, to yearn to be more, because the words that would deny them those rights are but ink on paper. For as long as it has existed, Kasa has been an experiment in demonstrating this each day. Our sisters and brothers of our walks, all walks of life, get up and prove to the world at large that no life is so meaningless as to deserve to be reduced into slavery or serfdom. And yet, we have allowed this experiment to restrain itself. Mansu Erba has done many great things indeed. Of that I cannot claim the contrary. But our Avo has let herself be swayed by the tepid and timid inner circle, and now those meek of heart claim to lead us forward. Shame on us if we let that happen. Shame! Kasa, oh Kasa of my heart, how you deserve more, how the world deserves more than the champions of freedom to lie around, fat, feeble, and idle. The slaves of the world deserve more resolve than to extend a hoof of peace to those who would see them enslaved. In this cause of freedom, we need to be fanatical as the knights of Occupus, as entitled to our beliefs as the kings of Wittenland, and as ruthless as those who would see us with the iron around our hooves. My name is Altu Keika, and I hereby announce my candidacy for the first commander in the name of all who still reel under the yoke of tyranny. Freedom now, or pay the price in blood. I like you. I like you a lot. I like you. Now, let's read her description. As she is the first one to be showing. She was born 18th February 966 in Bozzo Hills, Lagosa. If a cousin was asked to name a single poet they know, then with a great chance they would say Altu Kasa. The zebra mare is well known and admired for his succulent yet pungent language, which has won her great fame despite her somewhat eccentric behavior. Yet her origin is far more tragic. Born to poor farming family in Illes Lagosta, it was even a miracle that Altus learned to read thanks to her attentive parents. Already in youth, her experience with hardship molded her to be strong in her convictions, yet she never grew to resent the simple, poor way of life. Her evenings were filled by listening to her grandparents' stories about the past, how her ancestors had been fought on Davash with Akuku, and how her great-grandmother had fought under Sinahor upon against the Crusaders. It was from these tales that Altu, from an early age, yearned to be something more than just a farmer. She wished to be a soldier, only for polio outbreak to crush Altu's dreams, leaving her with a semi-crippled back legs and in need to wheel aids to walk. But instead of falling to the wayside, Kasa found writing a way to vent her feelings. Even without any education, she consumed in literature, aiding in this by her frequent visits to a medical facility in Seguro. Life in the capital gave her a chance to see a different side of Kasa, and it horrified her. Where there had been compassion and friendship between others back home, there were only fights and crime in the industrial slums. It was a squalor that she attacked in her writings. Her breakthroughs came, oddly enough, when an affluent pony hired her to recite her work at a party. What came to be known as the Night of Fire, the poet instead read poems that marked her rich listeners for their decadent luxury. The ensuing newspaper drama and lawsuit led to her imprisonment, but Altu simply continued to write inside prison, aided in her work by a friendly jailer. After a time, she walked out to a cheering crowd. Kasa became a successful poet, with her work published for free for all to read, earning her living from public recitals. But despite her wealth, the zebra continues to live at her ancestral farm, where she married the jailer who'd aided her, and the couple had twins. Oh! Oh my goodness, that's one story, all right. Now, of public squares. Since the early day, Kasa has had long dedicated itself to democracy and robust open square debates. Even when it was a small village of runaway slaves, Segogo's main square acted as a public forum in election times, where citizens could freely interact with those would-be leaders. But what allowed Kazan democracy to thrive in the early days aged poorly as the population grew and the territory was gained, whereas a Siguron could simply walk to the city's main square to attend a public debate. Those living in Fireshore or elsewhere in the Innerlands could hardly be expected to travel all the way to the capital for political discussion. The fear of seeing Kasa's democracy, a strictly Seguro-centric affair, had been an increasing pressing headache throughout the Mansu Erba term. The candidates succeed. Mansu Erba met and agreed to find some way to resolve this issue. Their solution was twofold. First, they would travel together to all the greatest city of Kasa to hold various debates in those cities as well, as to make sure that none of them could be held back on the tricky Kazan roads. They would travel together. Secondly, they would be followed by a press corps of journalists whose newspapers agreed to transcribe the whole debate in their newspaper. It was an expensive solution, but one that would have to do, even if it wouldn't do much good to illiterate and rural Kazan, of which there were plenty. That will have to do for now. I mean, it's better than any other solution I can think of, so, you know, it works for now. I think it's time to go and read the others. Yermuthu, 3rd July, 979, in Offerskill by Mona. One cannot always tell a creature's fate based on their origins. Born to a family of buried refugees, Yermuthu's entire life has been shaped by events prior to her birth. While her family had been just simple serfs living in the buried valleys, the crisis caused by the Pentarchy's rise led to her parents only narrowly escaping the chaos. Her childhood was spent growing up in Offercliff, where many refugees were settled by Kasa. Although originally a Wittenlandic pony, speaking Wittenlandic as her mother tongue, young Yerthu learned Kazan fast, enabling her to pursue rudimentary education in both languages. Despite showing prowess and intellect, she did not pursue higher education even when offered the chance. She instead began to aid her fellow refugees in any way she could. Over the years, her focus moved to coordinating the aid efforts and acting as a middleman between the government and camp representatives. It was during her work that Yermuthu began to slowly develop a unique political philosophy. She adored Kasa's harmonic values of individual liberty and democratic institution that ensured equality of all. Yet she saw the value of local communities and disliked how political capital was entirely centered as Seguro, with epistles, having little to say in affairs that concerned themselves. Her localist ideology gained some ground in the northern states and culminated in her election to councillor of Offercliff in 999. Despite her reservations, Yerfu was staunchly loyal to Mansu Erba's policies and kept their criticism to the parley rooms for most part. Her biggest political victory was the passage of the Petition Act in 1002, which enabled local communities to directly petition the first commander. So far, they're my favorite. Passerina, born 2nd of August, 956, in Ilha Roska. Biography. To many in Kasa, Persia's life embodies the prospect of individual opportunity offered by the free society. Born in the poor district of Ilha Roska, not much is known about his early life. Only thing known for certain is that as just a colt, he worked on various ships as a dockhand until growing into a fully fledged sailor. While his early life was spent on board merchant and cargo ships, he soon was allured to serve in the expanding Kazan Naval Task Force. Pazana has himself credits the Navy for beating the worst out of him. His naval career led him far away from the safe shores and trade routes to the high seas and shores of northern Zebrica in pursuit of pirates and slavers. Over time, he showed his prowess as a stallion capable of assessing situations calmly. He did rose to the rank of Terrero Sergento in 981, and an engagement in that same year would lead him to temporarily taking over as captain of a destroyer. His excellent conduct and bravery in the emergency led him to be rewarded. But even as he was given a chance to enroll into a naval academy, to everyone's surprise, Passerina declined the honor and simply asked to be allowed to finish his tour. Once decommissioned and back in Kasa in the year 983, Parnia did not remain idle. Using his experience and past and few connections, he formed the South North Corporation, a cargo company specialized upon transporting goods between Kasa and Makuia. His iron will and shrewd dealings allowed him to not just survive the competition against the well-established companies, but thrive. It was also then Passerina made his debut into the upper echelons of Kazan society, where his direct manners and titular pipe made him a known figure. By the beginning of 990s, Perna stood amongst the riches of Kasa. All this accumulated in his election as the councillor of Ilha Roska in the election of 991, by the backing of not just the local business magnates, but also most common citizens. In the council, he became a voice for modernization of Kasa. Culminating of this was the adoption of his program titled Perduta Project 2 by Mansu Erba in 1000, and saw construction of the first railway lines around Siguro. I'm going to go first, second, third currently. Lua Remidu, oh, he's got a short one, 11th of March, 972 in Siguro. Lao Remidu political career has been defined by his service and loyalty to Mansu Erba. The Zebra Stallion was born to the political elite of Siguro, coming from a long line of venerated lineage of councillors and bureaucrats. His ancestor had gained fame as Cernero Pon's camp aide. Through his life, Lua knew Mansu Erba from his childhood, and in turn the first commander found him to be a sharp-minded colt. After an education overseas in Makuia, Lua attempted to pursue a career in the burgeoning civil service, yet a single letter changed his life. An invitation from the first commander to become her secretary, a position he accepted at once. This led Lua Marina to Kazan politics, aiding Mansu in drafting speeches and legislation among other tasks, where his dutifulness didn't go unnoticed. Though Mansu, his name gained prominence amongst the councillors, and as the old first commander continued to rely on him more, the writing of the wall was clear. Lua Marina was Mansu Erba's designated successor. I think it's this person that's the designated successor, personally. You know? I think that, you know, that just makes sense, right? Right, guys? I mean, I really like the sound of you. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with all two this run. The Sinu Scandal. One of the very first electoral debates took place in the old square of Ilha Roska, where more than a century ago Kasa saw the birth of democracy Many expected to be relatively calm while the locals were still in the shock of Mansu Erba's demission, but in the end the debate quickly got heated. The Ilha Roskins had emerged for days after the press broke the news of a corruption scandal in Sergua. A council mayor named Sinu was facing charges over alleged corruption from Makwian private company seeking to build a branch of office in the Kazan capital. However, the case was made complex by Sinu's decision to turn herself in for accepting a large sum of money and gifts from the company, arguing that she had misinterpreted the company's intent. The company in turn tried to claim the whole affair had been a massive misunderstanding caused by internal and translation errors. The involvement of a relatively popular politician and specifics of the case made the matter hugely controversial in Ilha Roska, as the locals' disdain for the corruption is well known. Upon being asked about the matter, each of the candidates took a stance and explained their position. Lua Remedy argued that the law was clear. Everyone ought to face charges through lenient ones in the case of Sinu, considering that she turned herself in. Yamruth pounced on the argument, arguing that leniency would send the wrong message to the private sector and civil servants. She would instead give harsh sentences, especially the company who had no excuse for attempting bribery. Kasa in turn agreed with Yunfu over the evidence foul play of the company's hooves, but argued that Sinu acted in good faith and was not at fault. Worse, she considered that it would be criminal to remove a virtuous public servant for a private company's wrongdoing. Passerina finally intervened, arguing that there was little point in tearing each other apart over a so-called bribery case being reported by the alleged bribed. Instead, he claimed that it would serve as a lesson for every pony in Kasa, that they ought to forgive both Sinu and the company, since there was no harm done. Atu Ketsu was right. Obviously, guys. Come on, you idiots. But I think that makes it a good time to end this episode. If you enjoyed, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell button. And as always, peace.